So we're going to look at the 4G63 engine in this video, and we're going to be talking about the common problems and pitfalls that people have. Now, thankfully, Mitsubishi have made a really reliable engine. The 4G63 is phenomenally well made, nicely balanced, nicely set up, and the amount of engineering that's gone into designing the engine and the components that go into it, it's top notch. So you've got a really good engine there. So this video really is just to highlight some of the common areas and problems to look out for. And in a lot of cases, a lot of these have been overstated in forums and online, which is often the case. You find a few people have a problem and they tend to make quite a big noise about it, when in reality, the majority of people have not had these problems whatsoever. So let's discuss some of the most common problems that are likely to crop up on the 4G63 if you have problems at all. So crank walk can be a big problem. So the crank sits at the bottom of the engine, the pistons connect to it, and it's rotating. So it's doing a lot of work. It's taking a lot of stress from all the components, and it's converting the up-down motion from the pistons into rotational motion that can go to the wheels to drive the wheels. So crank walk is a condition where the thrust bearings start to wear. So once this has started, it will accelerate. The vibrations it causes will exacerbate the wear that you get on the crank itself and just cause this problem to run away and get worse and worse and worse. So it's discussed a lot. It crops up a lot in forums and online sites that discuss this engine, but in reality, it's only about 1 in 8 engines that tend to suffer from this problem. And when you start analysing these, there's various different designs of the engine, and you can tell the design primarily looking at the flywheel itself and whether it's got 7 bolts on it. So it seems to be more likely to affect those with 7 bolts. It's not to do with those bolts, but the generation of engine, the components that were used tended to be slightly weaker. It's not exclusively limited to the 7-bolt design, but it just seems to crop up a little bit more often on those. So what causes crank walk? Well, it's generally caused by excessive bearing clearances, and this usually happens through wear and tear. So if it's not properly lubricated, that wear and tear will increase those clearances and you will start to get that vibration happening. It tends to be the journals in those 7-bolt flywheel engines that is slightly weaker. So it really does pay to make sure these engines are well serviced, that you use premium quality oil, and you'll never have that problem cropping up at all. If you start to notice those vibrations coming from the engine, it's certainly something you really need to address, because it will just deteriorate and get worse. So conrod and crankshaft problems have also been mentioned. Now, these typically affect those really early engines. So I'm talking the first 8 years or so, from about 1980 onwards. Those original parts were generally made from cast iron, and they just weren't as strong as the forged steel that was used in the later versions of the engine. So that can result in the bending or breaking of those conrods or those other components in the engine itself. To address these issues, Mitsubishi later switched to forged components, and the engines were much stronger later on. But you can also get a wide range of aftermarket components that even exceed the stronger ones that manufacturers specified. So overall, we have to say this is a problem that affects those early engines. If you've got a more recent engine, it's certainly not something you particularly need to worry about. If you're starting to push excessive amounts of power through, it certainly makes sense to upgrade those components anyway. And other than the odd electrical system in the spark plug system or the fuel system, there's very little that goes wrong with these engines. Please let me know in the comments if you've had problems. We'll try our best to get you some sort of solution or direction on how to fix those problems. And I really love people's feedback just to understand engines more thoroughly, and we get a much more rounded out view of these engines and how reliable they are on the basis of the comments that you make. So please boot that like button. It really helps us to get out there if you do that. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so, because we would love you to stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.